I'd like to say good evening to everyone and welcome to the board meeting here at DeJohn Middle School. Today is November the 2nd, and we're about to go into closed session. But before we do, just give some procedures. Um, there's no internet? I have internet. Are we good? Okay. Sorry for that. We're gonna proceed on. But before we do, the board is here to receive public comment on any closed session item that is agendized. The board will then adjourn to closed session and reconvene in open session to continue the meeting at 6:30 p.m. If you are attending the meeting in person here at DeJohn and you wish to make a public comment now on a closed session item, you will need to submit an orange request to address the board form to indicate your desire to speak. If participating by Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking on the appropriate icon in the Zoom app or by pressing *9. If accessing the meeting by phone, there is no yielding of time to another speaker, and there is no substitution of speaker permitted. Please finish up if you are filling out those cards. And if you are here in the audience and or in the audience or in the Zoom or attending by phone, please get in line to speak. To access translation of the agenda, click on the top of the web page of the word English for translation into multiple languages. Meeting interpretation services are available by Zoom by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss the items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. All right, and for this evening, disclosure items to be discussed in closed session, Government Code 54957-7. We were recessed to closed session, and what we would discuss in closed session is public employee appointment, liability claim, public employee discipline dismissal, release complaint, and conference with labor negotiation. And then we will adjourn and be back here for 6:30 p.m. for the meeting to continue. Are there any public comment for closed session items?
There is no public comment.
All right, thank you. And with that being said, we will now close this session to go into closed session. And We'll be back here at 6:30 p.m. See you then.
Emma, I love that name.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna have to extend the closed session to 7:15. We're still in closed session. So 7:15, we will be ready. Thank you.
Perfect.
President Christian, if y'all are talking, we can't hear you. Okay, thank you, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy.
Okay, here we go. I'd like to call the meeting to order for this evening. The board just returned from closed session. And we're starting at 7:23. Once again, welcome to the John Middle School, November the 2nd. This is the regular scheduled meeting. To access translation of the agenda, click on the top of the web page using the word English translation into multiple languages. Meeting interpretation services available in the Zoom by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, the manner in which the Board of Education meetings are conducted has changed. Thank you in advance for your understanding and cooperation as we experiment with new ways to conduct the people business, while allowing for the maximum participation in hearing to our values of respect and safety for the community. We have changed the public comment format, which now occurs at the beginning of the meeting. Public comment will last for no more than 1 hour and include any agendized and a non-agendized item. And the time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. We are about to start public comment, but before we do anything, we're gonna do the pledge, and then the pledge, and then we'll have the land acknowledgement, and then we'll proceed on. Understand? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkan, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Hurst, will we do the roll call?
Absolutely. President Christian,
Present?
Trustee Clerk Gonzalez Hoy,
Present.
Trustee Reckler,
Good evening, I'm present.
Trustee Smith Folds.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good, present.
Trustee Phillips. Absent. Trustee Miles,
Present.
Trustee Sampagna,
Present.
all present and accounted for with the exception of Trustee Phillips, sir.
All right, thank you. And now we will have the report out, the ratification of closed session.
Thank you, Mr. President, for a report out. Under public employee appointment, we have the following announcements for our Director of Curriculum and Instruction. the board approved Elizabeth Henry as our new Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Trustee Reckler, yes. Trustee Smith Folds, no. Trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes. President Christian, yes. Trustee Phillips, absent. For our Director of English Learner Achievement, the board approved Isao Orozco as our Director of English Learner Achievement. Trustee Reckler, yes. Trustee Smith Folds, yes. Trustee Gonzalez Hoy at that time was absent. President Christian, yes. And Trustee Phillips was absent at that time. Our Title IX Educational Equity Director was approved for Jose Espinoza. Trustee Reckler, yes. Trustee Smith Folds, yes. Trustee Gonzalez Hoy, yes. Trustee President Christian, yes. And Trustee Phillips was absent at that time. And also Washington Elementary Principal was approved for Juan Alvarado. Trustee Reckler, yes. Trustee Smith Folds, yes. Trustee Gonzalez Hoy was absent at the time. President Christian, yes. And Trustee Phillips was absent at that time. And also for a report out from closed session. During the closed session, the board approved the recommendation of the superintendent to suspend without pay for 2 days a classified employee in the position of accounting technician, effective immediately by the following roll call vote. Yeses, 3, nays, 1, 0 abstentions, and 1 absent. That concludes our report out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst. And now we're going to proceed to public comment. Do we have in-house public comment before we go to Zoom?
Yes. Can we please have our public comment stand by the podium? Our first public comment is Belinda Shavers.
My name is Belinda Shavers, and I am a social worker with a private organization. And one of my clients has really brought me to the position where I need some clarification and understanding about the services that the school presents to children that have special needs. This child has a seizure disorder, and she also has an IEP. She has an aide that is usually with her during the school hours. However, she doesn't have any assistance to attend the after-school program. And I'm asking you guys if there's anything we can do as a whole to help this child attend the after-school program, because we all know the benefits of doing so.
Thank you so much. We are unfortunately not able to respond, but Dr. Hurst, our superintendent, can take your information and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Our next public comment is Rodney Brown.
I'd like to say good afternoon, good evening, board, and Rodney Brown, the community advocate here in the city of Richmond, California. I also work with Ms. Lee's daughter in regards to what Dr. Shavers had just spoken about. And we've met in May trying to get some peace and resolve with this particular situation that's been occurring and ongoing. Nothing has been rendered in terms of the support that's needed for this child. And from my understanding, this is pretty much ongoing throughout their entire district. I think this should be an action item or an item that should be put on for further instructions on what needs to be done to rectify the situations that's occurring within the sector of our district. Again, we met in May trying to bring clarity with this scenario. And I'm hoping that you all, the board, can take this into strong consideration for further notice. And let's all come up with some comprehensive measures to make sure that we rectify the situation in regard. The mother will come on after me and will speak more in depth about the chronological things that's been occurring with this situation. So if so, I'd like to yield my time to Ms. Lee, please. Thank you.
My name is Harishiana Lee. My daughter's name is Cordariana Griffin. Her health and safety is being compromised. The the special ed coordinator, she understands everything I'm talking about. I call her with no response. I email her, she disregarded everything I say. Summer school, I asked for where am I supposed to put my child? She disregards everything, tell me to put her wherever I want her. Come to find out she's enrolled nowhere. They tell me I have to put my child on a yellow bus. I tell them she needs an aid or some type of support. They tell me someone's on a bus with her. That's a lie. I get to school and find out my child is being injured. No one's calling me. That's not right. My daughter was supposed to get an aid since the first grade. I asked for one, they told me no. They rush her aid for summer school. She's only there for one day and disappears. I'm told that my daughter have no support, that she may have to stop going to school because they have no support. So I asked them if I can sit there. They tell me no, they'll figure it out. On to the next thing, her safety. She was with an aide for this school year. However, he wasn't administrated or certified into giving her medication. I was told that it was someone else on the school campus that can give her the medication. But if my daughter was to have a seizure with him, who's going to help my daughter? That's not fair to her. I've been dealing with this since my daughter's in the first grade. She's now in the fourth grade. Every time Perlita would give me an option to change my daughter placement, I was okay with it. The moment I started to push back is the moment I started to get backlash on everything. And now I'm here. I met with the superintendent in May. I let him know of other situations that I'm currently dealing with. Nothing has been rectified. What more do I have to do to get the services that's entitled to my daughter? Because this is a public school. I'm not paying for any of these services. So my child should be entitled to these services that's in her IEP. But they're disregarding it, and her health and her safety is not being factorized. And at that point, I can sue y'all. And I'm trying not to sue y'all because I love this school that my daughter's in because she loves it. But at this point, no one's here to help me or my child. I met with the superintendent. He did nothing. He gave me the runaround. Every person gave me the runaround. And now I'm here. So what are y'all gonna do about the situation? That's all I have to say.
Our last public comment in person is Zalon Harrison.
Good evening, board. Hope you guys are having a good evening. A little chilly outside. I want to say I have some good news to thank you guys. I usually come up here beating up everybody, but this time I want to thank, I've had some parents give me good comments about some things that are going on with your climate director and that our children are getting their needs met. So what's going on at the top is getting to the bottom in some areas, and I thank you for that. I also want to talk about some things that's on the board agenda. We have some the teachers union and the administrators union MOUs on there. Well, my concern with those are sometimes people use the unions to protect themselves from not wanting to do the job. It's unfair to use the union to not educate all kids. Union protects teachers, and there's nothing to protect the children and the parents. They protect adults that already have degrees. I feel that teachers do need a raise because the cost of living is crazy, and what y'all paying them, can't nobody live off of that. However, I do also feel that teachers need to be paid off of their children, how hard citizens of our school district are leaving our district. And they need to be paid from our children being successful. Too many of our Black children are leaving our district unable to have careers and to be college educated. And I know the word I want to say, but I forgot it. But we need to make sure that our teachers are doing their jobs. If they are senior teachers and they know the union's going to protect them and they're kicking up their feet and these kids aren't learning, that's unacceptable. The union doesn't need to foster behavior that isn't productive to all students. So I want the teachers to get a raise and I want people to have livable wages, but I also want Black children to be able to be productive citizens in our community and coming out of our district. I don't want children coming out of our district and they can't get a livable wage also. Thank you.
Our first public comment on Zoom is Maisha Harris Gash. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, y'all caught me eating a brownie. I didn't expect to be first, but hey, good evening. So, imagine my joy when I logged in and the meeting was postponed because I had some people here doing maintenance on my furnace. And I say that to say the district says that Kennedy is going to be like the trade school focus. So they were very thorough. I was asking 50 million questions while they were here. So tomorrow when I go to work, I will talk to my students about heating and air and all that kind of stuff. And like, you can make a good living at doing it. The next thing, even though you hear all this enthusiasm and joy in my voice, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And I am frustrated with my 9-to-5 career choice that I've made to be an educator. However, most days, my students do bring me joy. So I rest in my joy. Also, Election Day is 6 days away. And I hope that we are all taking the opportunity to share why voting is important in every election to our students. It doesn't matter how old they are. We can talk about the importance and why we vote. And so my kids know Ms. Gash goes and votes before she comes to work. I put my sticker on my cheek so they know that Ms. Gash voted, and we end up having dialogue and conversation. Demetrio, welcome to the adventure of parenthood. And finally, go Dusty Baker, go Houston. I hope they win the World Series. So everybody have a wonderfully blessed night, and I look forward to our next time.
And our last public comment is Don Gosney. Please unmute yourself.
There was a time when the focus of the Board of Education was to actually educate the young people in our community. In recent years, though, much of that focus has been on masking mandates, vaccinations, and very recently, the lack of teachers in our classrooms to actually educate our kids. Sometimes what gets lost in the shuffle is that the WCCUSD is also a multi-million-dollar business. One area that oftentimes gets passed over is the $2.4 billion bond program, which was set up to rebuild, repair, or renovate all 53 of the district schools. As a result of Prop 39 passed in 2000, we've had a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to look over the collective shoulders of district staff and the elected Board of Education. You ensure that to ensure that the people's money is being spent properly. The school board has a board policy that helps to establish the CBOC and some of the rules governing how it is set up and operates. The key to that board policy needs to be that the independence of the CBOC. It actually says that in Prop 39. As with any policy, it needs to be fluid and be adjusted from time to time to meet the needs of the district, the program, and the community. At recent meetings, there has been a proposed draft of a brand new board policy that would radically alter the oversight of the bond program. It's on the agenda again tonight. As the former chair of the CBOC and someone who's been with the bond program for 24 years, I'm here once again to advocate that the board hit the pause button and hit it hard so this extremely complicated policy can be carefully reviewed before being passed. The district frequently brings in consultants, experts in a field, to advise them before they take the district in a new direction. They often pay megabucks for these consultants. When it came time to draft this new board policy, though, the district rebuffed the efforts of the best informed and best qualified experts who are volunteering their expertise to help come up with a policy that would be acceptable to pretty much everyone. I strongly suggest that the board hit that pause button tonight, defer this agenda item using the volunteer experts to retool this draft policy and bring it before a joint committee of the CBOC and the board after the election and after the holidays, sometime early next year, where each and every detail can be carefully examined and deliberated. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment.
All right, I would like to thank everyone who gave public comment this evening. And we heard your voices. And now we'll proceed on with the meeting. Agenda review and adoption. Are there changes?
Yes, Mr. President, there's an item that we would like to pull as a staff, and that item is E3, which is the proposed revision to board policy 7214.2, CBOC.
All right. Are there any other changes? All right. Need a motion to pass the agenda.
President Christian, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
All right, it's been moved.
Smith Folds, seconds.
Second by trustee Smith-Fall. And to the vote. Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
All right, trustee Smith-Fall.
Smith Folds, yes.
Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
I'm sorry, President Christian, point of order.
I know the student trustees.
Never mind, President Christian, you got it. Never mind.
Yeah.
Gonzalez, yes.
All right. And let me get the student trustees. Trustee Miles.
Miles, yay.
All right. Trustee Sapanya.
Suhania, yes.
All right. And myself, yes. Sorry about that. So, all right. Now we proceed on. The approval of minutes from October 11th, 2022 and October 19th. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
President Christian, I'll go ahead and move both sets of minutes, October 11th and October 19th, 2022 for approval.
Smith Folds, seconds.
Oh, sorry.
All right, it's been second. And now, to the vote. And we'll start off with our student trustees. I'm so sorry. Trustee Miles.
Miles, yay.
All right. Trustee Sapanya.
Suhania, yes.
All right. Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
All right. Trustee Smith-Fall.
Smith Folds, yes.
All right. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Gonzalez, yes.
All right. And myself, yes. All right. And that passes. And now we go into the resolutions. Resolution number 2222-31.
I'd be happy to read that one, President Christian.
Okay.
In recognition of American Education Week, November 14th through the 18th, 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District of Education, Board of Education recognizes November 14th through the 18th, 2022 as American Education Week.
All right.
And I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 2223/31.
All right.
Smith
It's been,
Folds, seconds.
all right, it's moved and second. All right. Are there any comments? If not, we go to the vote. Trustee Miles,
Miles, yay.
trustee Sapanya,
Suhania, yes.
all right. Trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
all right. Trustee Smith-Fall,
Smith Folds, yes.
all right. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy,
Gonzalez, yes.
all right. And myself, yes. All right, and now we go to the next resolution. Number 2222-3-32, National Native American, trustee Miles.
In recognition of National Native American Heritage Month, November 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education recognizes the month of November 2022 as National Native American Heritage Month and encourages all educational communities to commemorate this occasion with appropriate instructional activities. I'll motion for this to pass.
All right, thank you.
Smith Folds seconds.
Okay, it's been moved and it's been second by trustee Smith Fall. Are there any comments? We go to the vote. Trustee Miles,
Miles, yay.
all right. Trustee Sapanya,
Sumpanya, yes.
all right. Trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
all right. Trustee Smith Fall,
Smith Folds, yes.
all right. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy,
Gonzalez, yes.
and myself, a yes. All right. And now we go to the next resolution, number 2223-33.
For Sikh American Awareness and Appreciation Month, November 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education recognizes and acknowledges the significant contribution made by the Californians of Sikh heritage to our state, and by adoption of this resolution seeks to afford all residents of the opportunity to better understand and recognize and appreciate the rich history and shared principle of Sikh Americans, their religion, and the tenets of their faith, and the important role that Sikh Americans play in furthering mutual understanding and respect among all peoples.
All right. Thank you. And now, is there a motion to move?
Motion to move the resolution.
Is there a second?
Smith Folds seconds.
All right, it's been moved, been second. And any comments? Not, go to the vote. Trustee Miles,
Miles, yay.
trustee Sapanya,
Sumpanya, yes.
all right. Trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
right, trustee Smith Fall,
Smith Folds, yes.
clerk Gonzalez Hoy,
Gonzalez, yes.
and myself a yes. All right, motion passes. And now we going to see the consent items. Are there any changes? Is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
President Christian, I'll make a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Okay,
Smith
Is there a
Folds
second?
seconds.
all right. It's been second. We go straight to the vote. Trustee Miles,
Miles, yay.
all right. Trustee Sapanya,
Sumpanya, yes.
all right. Trustee Reckler,
Reckler, yes.
trustee Smith Fall,
Smith Folds, yes.
all right. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy,
Gonzalez, yes.
all right. And myself a yes. All right. And it passes. And now we go to the superintendent, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. President. If we could pull up the superintendent report. Also, wanted to announce we're excited that our student representatives are going to be presenting directly after the superintendent report. So really happy about that and what they have to share with the board and the public as well. If we can go to the next slide. I wanted to take us through a journey of where we are going through and what we're going through in our district right now. I've shared this with the board before, but it's worth reminding everyone about how we manage complex change in our district. I just want to explain the document. So for those who cannot see it, there's 5 columns. The first one is vision. Next is skills, incentives, resources, and then action plan. And what that means is, in order for change to happen in any situation, managing complex change, these situations need to be in place. So there needs to be a vision. You need to have people in place that have the skills. You have to be providing incentives. You have to have the appropriate resources, financial and human resources and other resources. And there needs to be an action plan. And when those elements are in place, then we know through the research that we see change happening in complex organizations. What we know is that whenever we have one of these absent, then certain things happen in the organization. So if you just have skills, incentives, resources, and action plan, but there's no vision, there's no direction, then there's confusion because there's no vision. If you have everything, but you don't have the skills in place, the people that have the skills to make the needed change to happen, there's going to be a lot of anxiety within the organization. When you don't have incentives in place, then you're going to get resistance. If you have all of those, but you don't have the appropriate resources in place, then you're going to get a lot of staff that are frustrated. And if you have all these in place, but you don't have a strategic plan or an action plan, you're going to have false starts. So I wanted to let you know that I bring this document back before me on a regular basis so I can make sure that we're filling the gaps in each of these areas. And I do feel that we're making some movement in areas, but there's still pieces that we have to address in order for us to really change our organization. So next slide. So on this slide, we're talking about the change cycle as well. And this is another framework that I have before me on a regular basis, and I've shared this with my leadership team. When we talk about change and what that change cycle represents, this is what a lot of organizations go through. They have this conversation around the ideal state or the future state, where we want to be. Some people call that the vision. And then what we have to recognize also, we have to really truly understand our current reality, where we are. And then from the current reality to the ideal state, you have to do what's called a gap analysis and really understand what it's going to take to get from where we currently are to our future state or our vision or our ideal state. And I'm saying all that to say is this is some of the work that's happening right now, and I'll share a little bit more about specifics around current reality and ideal state. And then if you follow the arrows down, that's when you determine the next level of work. So what you need to know is we do have a current reality. That current reality started when we first came on board, and I talk about the equity audit. Or anytime we have data before us as well, we're going to have a data presentation even this evening. All of that is our current reality. You're going to hear me talk about ideal state, where we're trying to go, just some thoughts of what we're trying to do in our system. But then there's a bigger conversation that's happening around what are the needed actions, what are the high leverage actions that we need to take as a district that's going to move us from our current reality to our ideal state. That work is happening right now with the executive team. It will be happening with all of our leaders, managers, and even go down to our teachers and students. And then following the arrow, you can see there's this process where it's not enough just to have goals in place and knowing the leverage actions that we need to make, but we need to make sure that we're monitoring and providing feedback, and that we're using our leadership voice as well to share where we're going. Next slide. So this is a little small, but what I'll share with you is that here's some thoughts about organizational change that we've been talking about, where we're looking at building skills. And if you look along that slanted line, those are skills that we're trying to build, but not necessarily those skills. Those could be our graduate level profile skills, the skills that we want our students to have when they graduate. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to address our system and making sure that there's significant student engagement through project-based learning, through STEAM activities, through maker spaces, through thinker spaces as well. And as you can see, the system that we're desirous to build for our students is one that will engage them, but also where students have access to a rigorous course of curriculum, where they're still taught those skills around science, social science, English, mathematics, but also have opportunities to engage in hands-on projects and learning through projects-based learning. Also, our future state includes desire for our students, and even in 8th grade, to have portfolios of their experiences from pre-K through 12, and also entering into a pathway of study into our high schools, and even our seniors having artifacts that they're presenting to the business community, to their parents as well. So this is part of our future state. Next slide. Also part of our future state, you've heard me talk a lot about global competency and the importance of making sure that our students have the skills so that when they leave one of our schools from West Contra Costa Unified School District, that they are prepared to compete with anyone across the globe. That means that our students know how to investigate the world. They know how to recognize perspectives that are different from their own. They know how to communicate effectively with anyone across the globe, and they know how to take action on real world issues. So a big part of our future state is going to be based around skill development, or our graduate level profile skills, which we're determining now. But there's also a firm belief around those foundational skills, a STEM experience for our students, even a world language experience for all students. And I do have a firm belief around acquiring a second language for all students and the benefits of acquiring a second language for our students. Even the VAMPA experience, of visual and performing arts experience, is our future state. And then I talked also about a future state of engaging in problem-solving approaches like design thinking, problem-based or project-based learning, maker spaces, thinker spaces, and even exhibitions and internships for our students. And one of the things that we know that we need to do in our future state is making sure that we're hiring, retaining high-quality staff, and a clear focus on the instructional core, meaning that we have a clear focus on increasing the teacher's expertise in delivering expert instruction. So the teacher, and then the student engagement, and then the last piece is the content, a rigorous course of content. Also part of our future state is how we engage with our parents and training for our parents. And also a future state is ensuring that we have a multi-tier system of support. Next slide. So here's how we're going to get there. So it's going to start with our strategic planning process. And I've talked about how we are right at that red line right now, where we have a draft of a mission statement, a vision statement, and some grad profile skills that we want our students to have. And right now we are working on that, and we've taken feedback from the board, from a previous board meeting, now it's time for us to re-engage with the board on what their feedback was and present it to them so we can move forward or what our next steps are. Next slide. And here we are in year 2. Is once we have those items approved by the board, we're going to start unpacking those statements, the vision, mission, those skills. But also what you need to know is that we are currently having conversations with equity-based organizations so they could help lead this work so that we can have equity core values. You hear some of our board members talking about our anti-racist stance, our anti-racist statements, our equity statement as well. Those are all goals for this year. Next slide. So here's what you need to know is that the Guiding Coalition is still working behind the scenes, still having conversations. They meet monthly. We're still looking at the Guiding Coalition and having conversations about the Guiding Coalition and the makeup. But right now, it's still a cross-section of stakeholders. One of the big pieces we know that we have to get on our Guiding Coalition, and I'm going to look to our student trustees for support on this, is we need student voice on that Guiding Coalition. But we have been meeting on a monthly basis. So I wanted to share with you the last meeting we had was October the 17th. We have another meeting coming up this next week. So one of the things we did is we looked at the feedback that the board had provided to us. We looked at the mission, vision, statements, and we took their feedback seriously. And we made some adjustments without altering the intent of the work from all of those who participated in those month-long processes. So right now what we're doing is we're in the process of scheduling a meeting with the board so we could present those mission vision statements with the revisions and get their feedback. We also talked about the grad profile, those skills. We also have feedback from the Guiding Coalition on all of this. And then we also started talking about core beliefs, because that's one of the conversations that we're engaging in this year. We started looking at developing a grad profile subcommittee. But then the important piece that the board needs to know and the public needs to know is that I've been talking about the work around equity. I've been talking about how important this work is and how large this work is and how it has to go across every fiber of WCCUSD. And we're looking for that support. So we're looking at equity service providers. So we started doing some interviews with certain providers. And we have the Guiding Coalition involved in this conversation. Next slide. So I wanted you to just kind of get a feel of the rubric. So again, this is still in process, but we had an interview with one of the equity service providers, and we wanted to make sure on a scale of 1 to 3, what is the alignment to the WCCUSD mission and vision, even in draft form? We wanted to see that alignment, capacity to deliver the services requested. So that's a big ask as well. That they're able to articulate a coherent 3 to 5 year implementation plan. And then diversity of the implementation team. So that matters to us as well. Next slide. And then the big piece is, some organizations are really good at talking high level and talking about theoretical, but we want to know how can these organizations, equity-based organizations, move us from theory to reality to practice. And then also we wanted to see from these equity-based organizations evidence of successful implementation. So who else have they worked with and what have been the results? and then engagement as well. So I wanted to just give you a sample of the rubric that we are utilizing, and that work is ongoing right now, just so you know that we're not just talking about this, that we're really serious about our work around equity and anti-racist stance. Next slide. And that's all I have, and I'm going to turn it over to our students, and then we'll open it up for questions. So if we can give sharing rights to our students, and they can bring up their presentation.
So for our first student report, we wanted to present a student research survey proposal to gather data throughout the district. Next slide, please. So our objectives for this were that we plan to survey students in the district in order to gauge areas where students need support. We believe it's important to hear from a variety of students rather than speaking on our experiences alone. Because we are two students from two sites and we do not feel that we are competent enough, I guess, to speak for the entire student body. We hope to be working with the WCCUSD Communications Department to send the survey out to middle and high school students. Next slide. Okay.
So this survey is targeting middle and high school students since these students at these grade levels are the ones eligible to participate in the All-Student Congress. And with the All-Student Congress, they're going to provide further insight for the district past the survey.
The students will be asked questions about their school experiences, and these questions are related to school safety and the accessibility of various resources like school counselors where you can talk to about transcripts and credits, and incident reporting, so who to go to when there's an emergency like any sexual harassment incidents, or if you want to find out, hey, how can I file a Title IX suit? We want to know if people know those resources are available at schools.
And then also some of the other resources that they feel like if they need more support in, it could be also food and transportation, such as reduced lunch or bus passes provided by the district. And we want to make sure that these students know that these resources are available and are available to be given to them. So the next steps after gathering data from the survey, we want to prepare another presentation on the findings and the data at the next board meeting. And with this information, we'll be able to see the problem areas within the district and propose solutions to make sure these students know what they have and what they can achieve and get with these resources. And moving forward, we hope to continue to reach out to the peers for student insight in the WCCUSD community and advocate for our collective needs in the district.
Thank you, student trustees. And at this time, we'll turn it back over to our president for questions.
All right, and we'll start off with the questions. Are there any questions from our student trustees? And then we work our way. How many questions? You said? 3? Yeah, 3 questions. Trustee Reckler.
Thank you. I have a question for the student trustees. I'm wondering if they could tell us a little bit more about the All-Student Congress and its meeting schedule, what the Congress does, how students might join.
The All-Student Congress is not in session as of now. I'm not sure when it will be running again. The All-Student Congress, what it is basically is students from different school sites at middle and high school levels send representatives to join the All-Student Congress, and we meet with the All-Student Congress to discuss plans, usually for our trustee reports, and we find out what's going on at each school. So schools might talk to us about different events going on, like rallies or any interesting activities. So let's say a team won a football game and they really wanted to highlight that in a student report, we could mention that. And we also find out about problems like issues with gender neutral bathrooms, or I know last year there were a lot of problems about sexual harassment and assault being dismissed by administrators.
Okay, thank you. I don't know who to address the next question to, but is there a plan for the All-Student Congress to meet or be constituted? I guess we're in November now, so feels like something that should probably be addressed.
I actually wrote that down, Trustee Reckler. It's the next step for me. I do know that Mr. Tashaka Merriweather was involved last year with that, and I know who supervises Mr. Tashaka, so I will touch bases with his supervisor. And then Rosa and I will come back to the board.
Okay, that sounds great. Nothing further.
All right. Are there any other questions? Trustee Smith Falls. I gotta remember to look in the camera too.
Thank you. Thank you,
Sorry.
President.
Go ahead.
Christian.
Go ahead, Trustee Smith Falls.
Thank you, President Christian. Student trustees, how are we ensuring that our special ed students are represented in the survey? Are we making sure that we have accommodations or modifications to the survey to make sure they're able to take the survey, be able to complete the survey? Have we thought about that?
I believe we haven't included a way for them to be included in the survey, but nothing specific at the moment, but we definitely could touch bases with the communications department to ensure that everyone is represented and can answer the survey as well.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Hurst, if you can guide the students with maybe talking with Ms. Sonia Neely Johnson about the certain accommodations that we may need for our special ed students. And then student trustees, what is your threshold number for success, right? We have, I'm making up a number, 3,500 middle school and high schoolers, right? So how many surveys do you want to get back to say that, okay, we have an accurate overall representation of participants?
I want to say about 70 to 80%, since that's more of a majority. I feel that I would not be comfortable with anything below 70% participation, at least.
Thank you so much. And then Dr. Hurst, I do have a comment after this. And then Dr. Hurst, my last question, the third question for you. Have we examined our in-house resources when it comes to equity and anti-bias? Have we looked at the people that we have in the district already who can help do some of that professional development?
Yeah, we do have, I have names. I think I've shared those names with you. If not, I do have some names in mind that have done equity work before. And right now, as you could see, we're at the beginning stages of identifying. We just have the rubric and we've identified one, but we had one interview thus far. We have a long path to go, but to answer your question, yes, I do have my names in mind that's going to help us internally as well.
Thank you so much. And if you could share those with me again, I would appreciate it. President Christian, all I have left are comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you. I only have one question for Dr. Hurst. The graduate profile subcommittee, could you give us a timeline on what that would look like, their work and their completion?
Honestly, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, I think we're working on that timeline right now. The only thing I've been sharing with the board is that this is work that we want to accomplish throughout the year. And I do know that there's specific people, I think, that are meeting behind the scenes, and I can come back and bring that information because I think I'm requesting that as well for the timeline. So thank you for that.
Thank you. President Christian, that was my only question.
All right, thank you. Any comments? Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you, President Christian. I'll make it quick. Thank you to our student trustees for their first presentation. I do wonder, it actually, I thought it went hand in hand with Dr. Hurst's presentation in some way about the graduate profile, because I think their survey could be used to help develop that as well, right? So I would love to see what that survey could look like, right? It could have a big impact. So I appreciate that our students are thinking in that way, because I would love to see that data, specifically not just about academics, but also about culture and climate and needs from our students. I would like to say to our student trustees that surveys are hard for us. We never get 70–80% of a population. So we have to think about strategies to get there. And I would love to partner, and all of us to partner with you to be able to make that happen, because we do have the, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name, but the survey that our students do every year, California Healthy, yes, thank you, the CHICS survey, which is done once, and I think that we don't get that. We get a good amount, but it's not, hasn't been 70–80% of our students. So if you both can think of strategies where staff can really support you, and even the board can support you, I would love to do that. Because we have had challenges with surveys, but I'm excited to see what you do. Thank you for the timer. I think I'm out. I'll pass it back to you, President Christian.
All right, thank you, Trustee Smith-Fall.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. You guys did very well. Dr. Hurst, I do have a comment. I want to make sure that the All Student Congress is up and running, because we are, the school year is passing very quickly, right? And we want to make sure that we're hearing from the student voices right away. Also want to make sure that we can add some resources and support to our student trustees. Last year, our student trustees did tours of the school, and that may be a way of getting that survey numbers up if they're going and talking directly to students and making sure that they are saying why the survey is out there and what the impact is going to be. Also want to make sure that our communication department is supporting the student trustees with multi-language surveys, right? So we can make sure that we are reaching our students at their comfort level. So we're getting everything as accurate as possible. So, and we have multiple languages in the district. So let's make sure we're hitting all of those. So that's something that the communications department can help with. Dr. Hurst, again, I stress that we look internally first before we look externally at hiring any kind of consultants. I again urge the board to let's put a pause on that until we can get all negotiations under control. President Christian, I'm complete. Student trustees, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I look forward to the survey, and I'm here to support.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, comments? And for the comment, there's only 1 minute for the comment if you're doing a comment. 1 minute. All right, if it's no comments. Are we good? All right, we go to E1.
We'll turn that over to Ms. Huffman.
Good evening, board, parents, and community. California Education Code 60119 specifies that in order to be eligible to receive state funds available for the purposes of purchasing textbooks and related materials, the governing board of a school district shall hold a public hearing at which the board shall encourage participation by parents, teachers, members of the community interested in the affairs of the school district, and bargaining unit leaders. The opportunity to address the board regarding whether each pupil in the district has sufficient textbooks or instructional materials, or both in mathematics, science, history, social science, English language arts, including the English language development component of an adopted program, foreign language, and health. The governing board also shall determine the availability of laboratory science equipment as applicable to science laboratory courses offered in grades 9 through 12 inclusive. The board shall use the information provided to it by the district in conjunction with any information provided by the public during the hearing to determine if every student has sufficient core textbooks in the specified content areas. Once sufficiency is verified, the board shall adopt a resolution to that effect. President Christian, please open a public hearing regarding textbook sufficiency.
We open up the public hearing concerning this item.
We are 100% sufficient. The process that was followed this year was we collected textbook sufficiency forms from every teacher at every school. Each form was signed by the teacher to verify the availability of sufficient textbooks for students. Based on the results of this process, we have determined that all students have all the required textbooks and instructional materials. Thank you.
Are there any public comments on this item?
There is no public comment.
All right, no public comment. Are there any questions to the board? Trustee Reckman?
Thank you. I have a question. Would you be able to tell us how this dovetails with the Williams complaint?
Williams schools, there's visits from the county and our director, Gabriel Chilcott. They have a schedule in which they go out and check the schools that are selected for Williams, that we go and actually count the textbooks at those schools. So those schools in particular we have to ensure that we are checking that every student has the materials in their classroom for those assigned Williams schools. We also then, the county also then comes in and follows up. And if there are any insufficiencies, Director Gabriel Chilcott and our textbook department have to ensure that those materials are purchased or provided to the schools, which can include Wi-Fi, access to Wi-Fi, Chromebooks, et cetera. All of those Williams schools are also compliant, but on top of Williams, we also check to ensure that all of our schools have the textbooks. So we go beyond Williams and ensure textbook sufficiency for all of our schools.
Okay, so once again, if I'm just hearing this correctly, Williams is a physical go in, touch, and this is ensuring everyone, but it's not as deep.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Trustee Smith-Fall?
Thank you so much. Ms. Huffman, can you tell me the specified content area for TK? So we know in high school, we have social studies, science, English, math. What do we have specifically? What's the content area for TK and the materials that are supposed to go with that?
There are no specified TK materials that are required by the county. However, many of our TK classrooms, they do use similar materials, but there is no material selection for our TK classrooms. But they do use, typically our TK students are using the kinder math, they are using the ELA materials, the science materials, et cetera.
Thank you for that. And then this goes over all of our students that we educate. So virtual school is in this, Land Vista is in this, transitions in this. Is adult school in this?
Trustee Smith-Modes, no, adult school is not included in this count.
Okay, is there any other kind of program that we have that's not included? Everybody else is included in this count?
That is correct.
Thank you. President Christian, I just have comments left.
All right. Any other questions? Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy?
Thank you. Thank you, President Christian. Ms. Hoffman, does this also include and have we ensured that DLI classes have all textbook and curriculum needed?
Yes, this includes all classrooms, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, all classrooms.
Thank you. And this also includes ELD instruction?
Yes, and we are compliant with ELD this school year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. We need a motion.
President Christian, I'll move that we approve resolution 2223/20, resolution for grades K through 12 textbook and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Reckler will second.
All right, it's been second. Comments? Trustee Smith Fall?
I do have a couple of comments. One, Dr. Hurst, I would like to ensure that our TK teachers are meeting together, right? Because if we have TK at one school and TK at another school, and it's not some type of alignment and synergy among them, then we're going to get a whole bunch of different kindergartens going in, and there's going to be a whole bunch of kind of readjustment and alignment that the kindergarten teachers are going to have to do. So if we're going to expand TK in the district, we need to expand the way that we resource and support those teachers in TK. The other thing is, Ms. Huffman, I'm hearing different things about when I'm like on the ground about like with our DLI program not having certain materials, and our virtual school may not have all the materials like in hand. So I just want to make sure that we are really complete when we talk about having all the materials in hand. And I would, Dr. Hurst, like to know, what do we then do for adult school, right? Because if adult ed is not in this count, why is it not in this count? And what do we do to ensure that they're getting their full services? Thank you, President Christian. I believe I'm complete.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? All right, and we go to the vote. Trustee Miles?
Miles, yay.
All right. Trustee Sapanya?
Sumbanya, yes.
All right. Trustee Reckler?
Reckler, yes.
All right. Trustee Smith Fall?
Smith Folds, no.
Okay. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy?
Gonzalez, oh yes.
All right. And myself, yes. It passes. And now we E2. Certificated Board of Authorization. Oh, and we'll close the public hearing off of E1. It's been closed. And now we're going to E2, Certificated Board Authorization.
This will be presented by Dr. Greenwood.
Good evening, board. The recommendation this evening is to have authorization for people that need to complete the requirements for their credential. This gives them additional time to complete their credentials and authorizes us as the employee agency to allow that time. Okay, I'm sorry, can you hear me? Okay. Sorry. Once again, I'm asking for approval for the variable term waivers that gives the employee agency people for additional time to complete those requirements for getting their credentials. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Motion?
President Christian, I move that we approve the certificated board authorization education code 44258.3.
All right.
Reckler will second.
All right, it's been second, moved and second, and now comments? And we go to the vote. Trustee Miles?
Miles, yay.
All right, trustee Sapanya?
Sumbanya, yes.
All right. Trustee Reckler?
Reckler, yes.
All right. Trustee Smith Fall?
Smith Folds, yes.
All right. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy?
Gonzalez, oh yes.
All right. And myself, a yes. All right, motion passes. And we go to E4.
Yes, sir. E4 will be presented by Ms. Melissa Payne.
Good evening, trustees, superintendent, and community. My name is Melissa Payne. I'm the Executive Director of Contracts Administration, and tonight, staff is seeking authorization to continue the application to the California Energy Commission for additional CalShape funds. We received a notice of proposed award of more than 1.5 million for 21 sites. And with your approval tonight, that will bring the number of sites that we can invest these funds into 47 and the overall grant amount to more than 3.6 million. And we're seeking your approval and authorization this evening.
Are there any questions? Trustee Smith Fall?
Thank you. I just have one. Ms. Payne, how do sites get on the list? Is it because of their needs match what we're doing with CalShapes? Is that how they get on the list?
Yes, so this is actually the third round of applications that we've done. And so we need to submit an application first, identifying the sites that have potential eligibility. And so this is our third round that we're really excited about. And so we have 47 sites that are eligible. And now we have, with your approval tonight, we'll have all 47 with a grant amount.
Thank you so much. I'm complete, President Christian.
All right, thank you. Any other question? Need a motion?
President Christian, I'll move.
All right, it's been moved. Sure.
Yeah, he cut me off, sorry. I move resolution 2223-35, granting authorization to apply to the California Energy Commission to implement the California Schools Healthy Air, Plumbing, and Efficiency CalShape program.
Smith Folds seconds.
All right, it's been second. Any comments? If not, we go to the vote. Trustee Miles.
Miles, yo.
All right, trustee Sapanya.
Simpania, yes.
All right, trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Trustee Smith Fall.
Smith Folds, yes.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy.
Gonzalez, yes.
All right, and myself a yes. And it passes. F1.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time I'm gonna introduce two departments. We have IT department and also our ed services. And we're gonna turn it over to Ms. Larisha Huffman.
Good evening, board, parents, community, Superintendent Hurst. This is our first data summit of the school year, our student data summit #1 to the Board of Education and our parents and community. I want to introduce Director LaShante Smith, who will be presenting with me. And I'm also going to turn it over to our Chief of Technology, Tracy Logan, who will also introduce herself and her team.
Thank you, Ms. Huffman. Good evening, board, colleagues, and community. I'm Tracy Logan, the Chief Technology Officer, and along with our colleagues in Ed Services, I'm also joined this evening with our Director of Research and Reporting, Morgan Matthews. Next slide, please. So as Ms. Huffman mentioned, we are excited to be here this evening and to take some time to really dive into our data. We anticipate that tonight will not be a one and done session, but they were actually setting a precedent and a cadence of looking at student data regularly over time and really taking the time to analyze what does it mean, what is it saying, and what are we doing about it. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you'll see our intended 3 dates for our student data deep dives this year. So we're here together this evening. We will be together again in April and then again in August. The reason for this timing is that it follows our assessment calendar and our internal cycles of inquiry. So as we get data based on student assessment and student work, we look at that data internally at the school level and the central level. We make decisions and determinations, and then we present that information to you publicly. In terms of topics, this evening, we will be talking about academics, social emotional learning, culture and climate, and our district initiatives and what we're doing to address what our data is telling us. We look forward to continuing to talk about these topics and then also to spend time really looking at student experiences as another kind of data point. So what are students experiencing? What is their work telling us? What is the data really on the ground level beyond just what the test scores say? Next slide, please. In the background, it's important for you all to know that we are also working hard to make our student data more accessible and more actionable. It is not a new need. We've heard this need over time, and we've been working to figure out what are the right technology tools and platforms to support that work. You can see the timeline at the bottom of this slide. So ongoing data needs that really informed the pilot we did last year of the Who Knew It project. We learned a lot from that project. One of the things we learned is that that is not the right tool to support our work. It did not provide the kind of readily available data that really enabled site leaders and teachers to take action based on where their students were. And so we did further stakeholder engagement with teachers, with central leaders and site leaders to dig deeper into needs and to dig into various different tools that could support that need. And I'm excited to announce that we will be piloting EduClimber this winter and spring. So we're working on getting that set up and doing some pilots and really getting feedback on the ground about how that data helps inform instruction and instructional planning. So we're looking for this to be a learning experience for us as an organization and are very hopeful about this tool and platform, which will be first and foremost an internal tool and then could be expanded to external dashboards, et cetera. So now I'm going to turn it over, next slide, please, to our Director of Research and Reporting, Morgan Matthews.
Good evening, Board President, trustees, community, and staff. It is an honor to be here with you this evening to talk about our student data. Tonight's session is going to be focused on building our capacity to understand and use student data. And so we're going to be slowing down to build our skills and knowledge around our WCCUSD student data. So we're not putting forth a recommendation during this time, and we're not asking you to make any decisions. During this time, this is a learning time in which we all hope to support you in your leadership. And as we know, as we are all busy leaders, any time for our own learning is precious. So I invite you all to take a deep breath and relax into the next hour or so of time. To kick us off, I'm going to tell you a story about some other very busy folks who are committed to serving their community. And that's the story of 2 woodcutters. So there were 2 woodcutters who were fairly competitive, I'll say, and they were working very hard to get their jobs done, and they couldn't agree on who could chop more wood. So they decided to have a competition. So the next day they show up in the forest and they begin chopping wood as fast as they can. And after about an hour, the second woodcutter notices that over in the area where the first woodcutter is working, there's no chopping sounds coming. And he thinks to himself, she's tired already. And he smiles smugly and keeps chopping at double the pace. And this keeps going on throughout the day. About 15 minutes out of every hour, the first woodcutter stops. The second woodcutter continues. So as we're getting toward the end of the day, the second woodcutter is pretty sure that he's chopped more wood and he's going to have won the competition. But it turns out that his stack of wood is smaller. And he says, how could this be? I've been chopping straight through all day long, and you've been taking a break for 15 minutes out of every hour. And the first woodcutter replies, it's simple. When I take a break for 15 minutes out of every hour, I sharpen my axe. And so that's what I ask you to join me in doing this evening, is to sharpen your axes around your leadership in using our WCCUSD student data. Next slide, please. The objectives for our data session this evening are to make our student data available and transparent for you all and our community, to increase our ability to read, understand, and use our student data, as well as developing a shared outcome of what's going on with our student outcomes. We are also gathering questions for follow-up. Next slide, please. Our session this evening will proceed in 3 sections. Each section will provide an opportunity to engage with our student data, hear about initiatives, and reflect. We will also ground each section in student voice by hearing and seeing a video clip about student experience. We ask that you please hold your questions until the end of the entire session. We've prepared a great deal of data for you this evening, and there will be a trade-off between covering all of the information and asking questions during the middle of the session. In the spirit of learning, at the end of each of the 3 sections, we will pause for reflection and give a few guiding prompts. This pause is not intended for question asking. We've provided a paper copy of slides and an electronic copy of slides and a note taker to assist you in reflecting in the spirit of learning throughout the segment. The note taker does have a section on it if you would like to prepare your questions for the end of the session. We also ask, in the spirit of learning and following up, that you submit a copy of your note taker to Dr. Hurst after the meeting if you're willing, and we can also see if you've written any additional items on it for us. And with that, I believe I will pass it. Oh, one more thing. I'd like to just pause and address one more item before we get started. Next slide, please. Let's slow down for a minute and think about how we talk about students as we're getting ready to look at a great deal of student data. An educator quoted in the book School Talk by Micah Pollock said, "How I talk about students and the messages I convey to them or to others will influence the decisions we make about how we instruct and support students." So my ask of you is to recognize, as this educator has done, that the words that we use when we talk about students are important. Micah Pollock goes on to say, equity-oriented school talk about young people conveys belief in all young people's equal human value and potential, and care and respect for their development and well-being. So this is the kind of engagement and conversation that I strive to have when we talk about student data, and I invite you to engage with that with me and my colleagues this evening. With that, I'll pass it over to Ms. Huffman.
Next slide, please. As we know, learning loss has been a focal point across our state post-COVID. Various studies have outlined the impact of COVID and learning in schools. Next slide, please. Now we're going to go into a presentation on our overall academic outcomes, and we are going to hear from our former student trustee, Angelica Flores.
I was a student that got straight A's, did good in school. During the pandemic, I started getting F's. I didn't get good grades at all. And I felt alone And I know a lot of students in Richmond High and other schools in Richmond felt alone as well. Their parents lost their jobs. Their family members died. They had to take care of their siblings. Their family now depended on them for income. So we had teenagers going to work full time and missing school, you know, and that's obviously not something that you would want a student to go through, but that's something that we had to go through. A lot of students had to go through. And sometimes I just felt like teachers didn't understand that. But I also knew that teachers also struggled because obviously like we were not facing with education, we were more facing with life situations. And we didn't really have time to focus in our education or in our students' education. So, I mean, it was pretty rocky for me. A lot of my classmates, it was pretty hard for them too.
Next slide, please.
I was a student that
Student academic outcomes between 2021 and 21-22 are within a similar range as pre-pandemic years. Although West Contra Costa did not see significant loss during the pandemic, it is important to note that our efforts last year did not accelerate learning because students, staff, parents, teachers went back to work and school after being isolated, concerned about health and safety, and instability. Next slide, please. Here we have our SBAC ELA over time. You see in dark blue, the dark blue line is West Contra Costa Unified School District, and California is the teal line. We see our SBAC data over time and a decrease at both the state and West Contra Costa. The state is at 51% in 2019 and goes to 47% in 2022. And then we see that West Contra Costa is at 35% in 2019 and moves to 32% in 2022. Next slide, please. Again, our SBAC math over time. West Contra Costa again is the dark blue line and California is the teal line. We see our SBAC data over time and a decrease at both the state and West Contra Costa Unified School District. The state is at 40% in 2019 and it moves to 34% in 2022. West Contra Costa, 24% in 2019 to 21% in 2022. Next slide, please. Here we have our cast over time. Again, West Contra Costa is the dark blue line. California is in teal. Our California science test. 5th and 8th graders and high school students take CAS one time during their high school career. Important to note that our CAS participation was low. The state was 30% in 2019 and 29% in 2022. 18% in West Contra Costa and 18% in 2022. So we essentially remain the same. Next slide, please. English learner reclassification. As you can see, this is our reclassification rate over time. And current in 2021-22, we were at 7%. And in 22-23, we are at 8%. Next slide, please. Here we have our graduation rate, which is a 4-year cohort graduation rate over time. As you can see from 2019 to 2020, there is a slight increase in 2021 from 79% to 83%. Next slide, please. Here we have our UC-CSU requirements. This again is of the students who graduate, how many met the UC or CSU requirements. In 2019-2020, we have 47%. And in 2021, we have 50%. For our college admission rates, this again is out of the students applying to UC and CSU schools. This is the rate of acceptance. So again, you see our CSU admission rates on the left-hand side. On the right side, you see our UC admission rates. The left side also has our 3-year average with our high schools. And then you see our UC admission rates for 2021 on the right side. Next slide, please. At this time, I'll turn it back over to our Director of Research and Reporting, Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huffman. I invite you now to slow down your thinking in the spirit of learning and sharpening your axes. What do you notice in the data? What do you wonder about the data? Might you be making any assumptions that might not be grounded in evidence? And how could you slow down your thinking to challenge those assumptions with evidence? What questions do you have? Now is a time intended for your silent reflection. You're welcome to use your note taker. Now is not a time intended for verbal questions. Thank you. Thank you for engaging in this reflection as part of the learning focus of tonight's session. I'll pass it back to Ms. Huffman.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Next slide, please. Now we are going to look at our academic outcomes by subgroup, and I'm excited to say that we have our trustee CJ Miles on video. So let's watch our video. Thank you.
I think it's important to know your demographic. It's true that we can make a couple generalizations about the district based on like how many people of XYZ race or how many kids are like age. But we have to realize that a WCCUSD student, like we're not a monolith. Some of us have to take care of our siblings after school. Some of us have extracurriculars. Some of us just go home after school. There's a lot of things that need to factor in when you're planning.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
I think it's important to know your demographic.
Next slide, please. Actually, we can leave it here. Sorry. Significant disparities remain. Can we go back one slide, Genesis? Thank you. Significant disparities remain in opportunities and performance between student populations. While race, ethnicity, and subpopulation data tells part of the story to help analyze student achievement, there are other factors that influence data and require us to do root cause analysis at a deeper level on the students in our schools. So I ask that while this data is important and requires us to do better and continue to set high expectations, it is equally important to remember that each of our students has a unique story of resilience or perseverance. Next slide, please. Here we have our SBAC, English Language Arts data. The left-hand chart is by race and ethnicity. On our right chart, we have our data by subgroup. ELA is the dark blue band and math is the teal band. In ELA by race and ethnicity, our lowest performing group are African-American students at 19%. Our highest performing students are Filipino students and white students at 60% and 57%. In math, Our lowest performing by race and ethnicity are African-American students at 8%, and our highest performing by race and ethnicity are white students at 46%. For ELA by subgroups, our lowest performing are EL students at 6%. Our highest performing are students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students at 22%. And in math, our lowest performing by subgroup are ELA at 4%. And our highest performing subgroup are foster students at 14%. Next slide, please. Here again, we have our California science test. It's again important to note that 5th and 8th graders take CAS and our high school students take it one time in grades 10, 11, or 12. Our left-hand chart is by race and ethnicity. Our right-hand chart is by program subgroup. Our lowest proficiency by race and ethnicity are African-American students at 9%, and our subgroup ELA English learners at 1%. Our highest proficiency by race and ethnicity are white students at 45%, and our subgroups, students who are economically disadvantaged and are fit and foster at 10%. Next slide, please. Here we have our grad rates by race and ethnicity. Vertically, you see our graduation rates. Horizontally, you see the years. We have our 2021 data points. A highlight is that 75%, we have a 75% grad rate across all race and ethnicity groups. Next slide, please. Here we have our grad rate by subgroups. Vertically, we have our graduation rate. Horizontally, the years. We have our 2021 data points. Our grad rate has increased for our low socioeconomic students and our EL students. An area of concern or focus are our foster youth which had a decline in grad rate to 38% in 2021. Next slide, please. This slide is on our grads meeting UC or CSU by race and ethnicity. The change in, it's important for us to note that the change in graduation requirements allow for students to graduate at reduced credits, which meant that they did not necessarily meet the UC or CSU requirements. Students by race and ethnicity who met, these are students who met our UC and CSU requirements. Our Asian, Filipino, and white students are the highest group to meet UC and CSU requirements. Next slide, please. This is our grads meeting UC and CSU by subgroup. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged students are the highest subgroup to meet UC and CSU requirements. Next slide, please. In response to our data and data that we previously knew by looking at previous year's SBAC and also our reading inventory and STAR assessments for both math and ELA and also previous reclassification data, there have been initiatives that have been put in place last year and this year and continued initiatives from even 3 years ago. And so in response to our academic data, we have been working to refine and define the most effective teaching strategies, leadership practices, and organizational practices to support improvement in outcomes for students. The slides following will identify some of the key instructional expectations and professional development supports being offered by central office to leaders, teachers, and classified staff. In educational services for academics, we have really been supporting with implementing high leverage teaching practices, such as high depth of knowledge, the use of complex text, academic discourse, writing with evidence across all content areas for both ELA, math, and science, which is aligned to Common Core rigorous academic standards and progress monitoring student learning through multiple forms of authentic assessment to determine mastery. The use of data-informed cycles of inquiry with multiple forms of assessment to implement and adjust classroom grade level instructional plans. Collaboratively analyzing formative assessments in relation to grade level standards and we're using data to inform instructional practice. We're engaging in a variety of evidence-based collaborative professional development opportunities to sharpen knowledge of content and pedagogy. We are observing and providing specific, timely feedback on the implementation of high leverage teaching practices and standards aligned to tasks and assessments. We are cultivating interdependent relationships with families, caregivers, and ensuring students and families have access to support for academic and social emotional learning. We're ensuring that students and families have opportunities to provide voice and feedback on school experiences. Next slide, please. Some specific actions for instruction. We've really been focused this year on literacy and implementing foundational literacy instruction and Common Core literacy practices in all preschool through 12th grade classrooms, and really ensuring the consistent use of balanced literacy for both reading, writing, and phonics daily in classroom. We've been supporting with standards-based instruction, implementing Common Core standard strategies and effective instructional practices in classrooms. For English learner access, support, and success, we've been ensuring effective implementation of designated and integrated ELD. Teachers emphasize content-specific academic discourse strategies, and EL students have equitable access to CTE programs, VAPA courses, and A through G courses. African-American students access support and success, purpose for recruitment and support of African-American students into CTE programs, VAPA courses, and A through G courses. Students are being provided additional support to get and stay on track for grade level, including Mafanikio, academic tutoring, and mentoring contracts. We also are supporting with an MTSS framework at Tier 1, ensuring that students receive appropriate support for their academic needs at all tiers, with an emphasis on effective Tier 1 classroom-based strategies, including small group instruction, differentiation, and data-based supports and interventions, specific Tier 2 and Tier 3 support for our African-American and EL students through additional intervention, tutoring, and/or mentoring before and after school and during school. We are working to expand CTE pathways K-12. We're working in collaboration with community partners and industry to expand CTE pathways K-12 within the district. K-12 college and career, they are working expanding access to rigorous courses, college and career readiness opportunities, strengthening CTE programs and the quality of existing courses, and we're also increasing A through G eligibility. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm gonna move faster. So some areas around professional development, some specific key actions. We're focusing on early literacy professional development, and we're also offering professional development monthly, and we are also offering professional development on Wednesdays. We are focusing on Common Core shifts professional development. We are focusing on professional development of our curriculum adopted PD. We also are offering professional development on effective site-based teams. And we're also conducting learning walks with principals and as executive directors and teams to actually look at instructional practices across schools. Next slide, please. We are also offering professional development for our English learners. There is ELD professional development, and there are also professional development aligned to the SPSA strategies and goals for ELs for both newcomers and long-term ELs in conjunction with EL observation with an aligned English learner observation protocol. For college and career, teaching and learning, they're providing materials, resources, and ongoing training to teachers and leaders on project-based learning and college and career global competencies. We have a line professional development PD offered on smoke days 3 times per year, summer professional development, and 1 Wednesday per month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huffman. Now that you've heard about our overall academic outcomes and our academic outcomes by subgroup, as well as our academic initiatives, I invite you to engage in another pause for reflection. And I encourage you to use your note taker. What do you notice in the data? What do you wonder about the data? Are you engaged in any thinking that you might need to slow yourself down with? And what questions do you have? Again, this is a time for silent reflection. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Smith.
Thank you. So now I'm going to go through our social emotional learning data as well as our culture and climate data. And as with the previous presentation on academics, we are going to start with a student voice video.
So I think there should be like outlets where they can just talk to someone and feel like welcomed and feel just listened to. A lot of people just want to like express their feelings in a safe environment. I think it's gonna help a lot with like people doing their work. I think a lot of people, when their mental health is down, it's like my last priority would be like finishing an assignment. That just wouldn't be on my mind. So I think there should
Next
be
slide.
like outlets where they can.
So when we think around social and emotional learning, as well as culture and climate, we know that in order to support the whole child, we have to focus on social and emotional learning as much as we focus on academics. We must look beyond academics to celebrate and support the whole child, including the whole child needs and whole child successes. Next slide. So there are several ways that we collect data related to social emotional learning as well as school climate. And then one of those ways is through student surveying. And so one of the surveys we use is the California Healthy Kids Survey. This slide right here shows you the data for the California Healthy Kids Survey for all of California. And what I want you to notice is that in our California elementary schools, we see that students are reporting a high percentage or a positive rate for caring relationships being connected to school and an overall perception of school safety. But in California, we see a drop in safety perceptions when students get to middle school, and then we see drops in high school. Next slide. So in West Contra Costa, the last time we took the California Healthy Kids Survey was in 2018. And then we took it when students returned from virtual learning in 2022. We called out several areas related to safety, caring relationships, school connectedness, meaningful participation, fairness, and then an overall perception of school safety. The reason why we're looking at these specific areas is that we know that safety is one aspect, but there are several things that go into safety, including everything I just mentioned. Just like California data, we are seeing a more positive response rate to our students' perception of safety in our elementary schools, but we do see a drop in perceptions of safety in middle schools, and we see a further drop in high schools. But what I can tell you is that post-lockdown, our data is pretty stable compared with our pre-COVID numbers, especially for our elementary students. And again, we do see the drop in middle school, and we know that there were several factors that could have contributed to the drops in middle school, especially coming back from COVID. One of them being that students going to middle school after COVID had not been at a secondary school campus. And so we can assume that's why we're seeing a drop in our middle school perception of safety rates. Next slide. Then we wanted to survey our staff and to see, how do staff feel? Do staff feel that they have caring relationships, opportunities for students to meaningfully participate? Are rules fair? Is there rule clarity? And is there a perceived positive perception of safety? And what we see again in our staff survey is that there is a decrease in perceptions of safety right around that middle school and high school age range. So of course, if you are trying to put a correlation between the two, you could say that the increase in mental health needs among our middle school students and our high school students definitely contributes to how staff may be feeling. Next slide. So this also is similar to our last slide, and this is around our parent and family perception. So again, as you can see, there's another trend around our middle school and our high school parents having that drop in perceptions of safety, as well as the drop in opportunities to meaningfully participate. Next slide. Another data point that we continue to collect is around suspensions. So this slide right here is really being transparent with all of you tonight around our monitoring of our disproportionality in school suspensions. The disproportionality index for Black students in West Contra Costa Unified in our current school year to date is 3. What this means is that Black students are represented in the suspension counts 3 times as much as other students relative to the number of students. Our Black students are the only ethnic group in our district that are disproportionate in student suspensions. Next slide. This slide shows our number of suspensions over time. And as you can see, going across the bottom are our months, and then going across the top are the number of suspensions. And right now our counts are similar to pre-COVID numbers, but we also know there's some suspensions still in the documentation process. So this data may change, but we are trending to pre-COVID rates around our current number of suspensions. Next slide. This is another way to look at our suspensions, and this is by just analyzing our rate of suspensions. So as you can see, our current district rate is 1.2%. That means that is the rate of students who have been suspended at least one time. Our African American student rate is at 3.4%. And again, that is our only ethnic group that has a disproportionate rate compared to our district rate. The other rate that I'll point out is our homeless and foster rate. Those 2 rates are the highest for our subgroups. So African American, homeless, and foster youth. Next slide. So the next data slides are going to look at our chronic absenteeism rate. So this first slide is looking at our state rate. And as you can see, pre-COVID, so 2020 to 2021, the state had a chronic absenteeism rate of about 18.5%. And currently the state's rate is at 24.9%. Next slide. So this slide is showing our district chronic absenteeism rate by month. So if you look vertically, you will see our chronic absenteeism rate And if you look horizontally, you will see the months of the year. And so currently, we're at a 19% chronic absenteeism rate. And then if you look at the bronze line from 2019 to 2020, you will see a significant drop. And that was when we went to online virtual school. Next slide. Now here are chronic absenteeism rate by race and ethnicity. And so how to read this slide is that the darker blue shades are more positive rates. So these are students with excellent, manageable, or satisfactory attendance. And then the lighter shades of blue are students who have chronic or severe attendance issues. What you can see from this slide is that our Hispanic or Latino students have an almost 80% satisfactory or above rate. And then our Filipino, Asian, and white students also have high rates of positive attendance. Next slide. This slide breaks down our chronic absenteeism by subgroup. And what I will point out here is that our English language learners have an 80% satisfactory or above chronic absenteeism rate. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk about some of the initiatives that we are currently working on to address some of the trends that we have identified in our data. Next slide. So some specific key actions from teachers and leaders are we are committed to utilizing restorative and positive behavior strategies and district-approved SEL curriculum in the classroom to support our students in feeling connected, building community, and support their overall engagement in learning. We are hyper-focused on ensuring that schools have the supports that they need to ensure that they are prioritizing relationships, because as I spoke earlier, safety is one aspect, but students feeling connected to someone at school is a high predictor of students then feeling safe. We have some formalized data points that we collect. One is our SEL screener. We just completed the screening period, and just to remind the board and the public, our SEL screener is a screener that students take and they identify their feelings. How are they feeling? How are they doing? And this is a way that we can identify students who may be in need of more mental health support before they act out or before we catch them in other ways. So it's it's a new thing that we're doing, but we have found that it's been impactful in really identifying students. We are regularly seeking out students' feedback on their learning experiences and using that information to promote psychological safety, caring relationships, and personal agency. So essentially, we are finding ways to get regular feedback from our students so that we can hear about their needs on campus. And then you have heard me talk about this before, but we continue to push our school climate and safety teams to make sure that teams are in place on every campus to identify trends, to identify behaviors that may be occurring, and then to work on action plans to address the trends that are identified. In addition to that, every school site has triage teams in place for students on campus who may be in need of additional support. Next slide. So some more key actions that we're doing related to professional development is we are focused on capacity building for social emotional learning. So we've been providing regular professional development as well as all the materials and resources so that schools can implement SEL on their campus. We centrally purchased evidence-based SEL curriculum and have been really pushing this at our school sites. And so to date, we have trained our classified staff, we have trained our teachers, and then we continue to reach out to schools to ensure that all of their school staff has everything they need to implement the SEL curriculum in the classroom. In addition to that training, we are training specifically, we are tailoring training specifically to our school climate and safety teams to ensure that they have a like agenda and understand what they should be doing at those school climate and safety meetings. And then we have a leadership track as well. So we've been training our principals as well as our vice principals who hold a lot of the discipline work on their sites. We are continuing to be restorative and responsive. And with that, we're focusing on other means of correction. So before a student is suspended, we really want to utilize other means of correction, because even when a student is suspended, that's removing a student, but it's not actually implementing an intervention. So we want to ensure that we are implementing interventions for students, as well as consequences. We have prioritized SEL on sites in other ways as well. So we're trying to ensure that outside of a curriculum, sites are using just social and emotional learning practices, and those are embedded in their regular lessons, because essentially everything can become a social emotional learning lesson, and we want to make sure our sites are supported in doing that. And lastly, around professional development, we just want to ensure alignment across all of our providers. So any provider that comes in, we want to make sure that they understand the WCCUSD way, and we want to make sure that they have the tools to implement various interventions with the students that they serve. Next slide. So our family engagement department is also hard at work in doing, implementing some key actions. So there's been focus group for African-American students and families, and these focus groups are inclusive of African-American students and are conducted to enhance voice and engage in continuous improvement of practices and programs. We also have parent learning supports. So that's a centralized capacity building for parents to support students at home. And that includes leadership training, volunteer capacity building, and support to build academic and social emotional skills. We have an interdependent family engagement, and that means ensuring that staff meet with students and families at least twice a year to engage in two-way dialogue around students' academic and social emotional progress. We know that we're emphasizing student voice and choice, so that's supporting the district-wide implementation of instructional practices that build relationships with students and also support student voice and agency. And then our full service community schools model, just improving the coordination, integration, accessibility, and effectiveness of services for children and families, particularly those students and families who have the highest need. Next slide. Lastly, to address attendance, we are implementing a multi-tiered attendance improvement plan. And right now, our biggest push is on attendance conferencing. And so we know that attendance is important, and we have to continue to emphasize that to families, community members, students. Attending school is super important, and we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to encourage good school attendance. So for those listening out there, we want to support you in making sure that your student gets to school so that they can get all they can from the educational environment. Right now, our focus is on attendance conferencing. What an attendance conference is when students are identified as becoming truant or chronically absent, we get notifications of who these students are. And it is up to us and the school site teams to meet with the families to identify the root causes of the attendance problem. So why is a student not attending, or what barriers are in place that a student is not able to access education? Once we identify those root causes, that's when we can connect students to various resources to support their attendance. So right now we are focusing on attendance conferencing because we need to close attendance conferences and identify, again, the root causes of why our students are not attending. To date, we only have 10% of our conferences closed. So this is a huge push that we are working on presently right now. We want to ensure effective messaging and engagement, again, to remove barriers to attendance. And we are going to be starting some attendance campaigns. So again, just promoting attendance, promoting good attendance, but also allowing parents and families to know that when students become chronically absent and start to miss, they can become disengaged from the academic environment and then could basically start to engage in some more at-risk behaviors. So school is the best place for a student to be during the educational hours. So we want to really make sure, and I'm emphasizing it as much as I can, that attendance is super important. We had at our sites SART teams, and what these teams are is student attendance review teams. So if your student is identified as being chronically truant or absent, the first kind of step would be to meet with your school SART team. And again, they would identify kind of those barriers that are keeping students from coming to school. We have now reestablished our SARB boards. And so these are for students who have more chronic attendance issues. And on our SARB boards, we have various community members, we have doctors, we have social workers, and different community agencies that will sit at the board to really support a student in attending school. And then the last thing is that we're continuing to partner with service providers who can support us in helping us get students to school. And then any of those barriers that we identified, they can support with some attendance specific intervention. And I will turn it back over to Morgan for the reflection.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Thank you for engaging in this learning opportunity with us around our student data. We'll have one more pause for reflection. But now that you've seen our culture, climate, and social emotional learning data, as well as heard about our initiatives, what do you notice in the data? What do you wonder about the data? Is there any part of your own thinking that you would like to slow down to gather more evidence for? And what questions do you have? Thank you again for making this a learning focused session, and I'll pass it back to Ms. Huffman.
Thank you. That is the conclusion of our data summit number 1. Thank you.
So we're going to turn it back over to our president for any questions.
All right, and we'll start off with the questions. So I see Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, Trustee Beckley, Trustee Smith Fall. Okay. All right, Clerk Gonzalez Hoy.
Thank you, President Christian. I have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna pick my top 3. First of all, thank you so much to the team for the presentation. Ms. Huffman, how many English language learners do we have in the district?
I do not have that number off the top of my head. However, I do want to announce or name that I do have 3 of my directors here on Zoom. Director Gabriel Chilcott, Isaul Orozco, and Dr. Huey. Mr. Orozco, do you have that answer off the top of your head, the number of English learners we have in our district?
Not the exact number off the top of my head. Our district is around the 10,000 marker, almost close to about that 50% mark if we also include our reclassified fluent English proficiency students who were formerly English learners.
I'm sorry, would someone be able to clarify? I could not hear Mr. Orozco. Did he say somewhere between 10 to 11,000?
For current English learners is slightly before 10,000 English learners.
Thank you, Mr. Orozco. My next question, Ms. Huffman. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it. So The presentation was tough. Do you believe that SBAC testing and the CST is a true reflection of the teaching and learning that's happening at our schools every day? And this might be a weird question, but it goes with my comments later.
That's a very tough question to answer. I will start off by saying that I think what you heard from our students, our student trustees, is that there are many factors that influence data, right? And so it's not just about test scores, right? Because there are so many factors. There's home life, there's socioeconomic status, there are, just so many challenges that some of our students face. However, and our families for that matter, right? In terms of, students who have to babysit their nieces or nephews or siblings, or parents who, maybe struggle with getting their child to school every day. So there are so many factors that can influence data. However, I do think that if we look at our data comparatively to the state as a whole, right, we definitely have room for growth because we even see in some data with the state average that they're higher. And so, it's not necessarily completely reflective because we have our population is different across all our, schools in the state. But I would say we have definite room to grow and definite room for improvement as a district around our teaching and learning. And that's something we are continuing to reflect on and partner with our teachers and our leaders to make those improvements.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman, for that. So my question's related to slides 32 through 34. How are we ensuring that there's a deeper focus on African-American students, English language learners, and special education students in every classroom? Because those slides go deeper onto what we are doing as a district. How are we digging deeper on specifically those subgroups that the data says are doing the worst, right? How are we digging deeper and ensuring that it's happening in every classroom?
Mr. Orozco, do you want to start off with the things that are happening in our EL department?
Yeah, there's several factors that are occurring this year that have really began from years prior. One of the biggest items is elevation. Elevation is not only a English learner platform for data and for monitoring growth, it is also a platform that increases teachers' capability to identify strategies in the classroom for English learners. This year in particular, we also wanted to really focus on the integrated component. So an English learner is not only receiving ELD services during a designated ELD time, but in all classrooms. So we added that component on elevation, meaning that a math teacher, a science teacher have access to those EL strategies to integrate those strategies and lessons focused on subgroups of English learners. So if you're looking for a long-term English learner activity, it has that focus versus a newcomer coming into your classroom. So those resources and trainings started last year with that data lens, and this year we're really digging into the strategies component and really now moving into the implementation of those strategies that connects to a newly developed rubric approved by the state and county. That's a big portion of the lever in terms of high leverage aspects that we're looking for in all classrooms, not only ELD classrooms.
I would just add for, just overall, Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, often we focus a lot on tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, but the reality is that we really need to get strong in our tier 1 instruction. You have to have good first instruction. You can't rely on interventions to solve some of the challenges within our data. So really it's about, we've really focused this year trying to offer much more professional development really ensuring when we're talking about reading, it is important that you really build on students' foundational skills. Studies have shown that if students are not fluent by third grade, their data will continually decline. It will not improve. And so if we don't put a lot of effort into ensuring our kids have strong foundational skills, then we are going to continue to see this type of data. And so I think ensuring that we have our ELD in place for our English learners, ensuring that we are actually focusing in on foundational skills, ensuring that we provide robust professional development, which has started happening last school year. And this school year, which, might also be an indicator. I think Ed Services and the team has worked really hard, and our teachers and our principals. And so that might also be attributed to why we did not see huge dips, although the data is still not where we want it to be. I think that we really truly need to focus on tier 1 instruction, good first instruction, and actually really monitoring that for all of our schools. So I think if we do those things and do it well, we'll see tremendous growth.
Thank you. Thank you to all staff who contributed. President Christian, that was my last question. I'll have comments later.
All right. We got, let's see. Excuse me. Yes. Yeah, Trustee Reckler and Trustee Smith-Fall.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. There certainly is a lot here. On page 19, which is the UC and the CSU A to G completion rate, there actually is a really nice uptick of 3%. And so I was wondering if you had any explanations for that, if you knew, and if it was pocketed by school or area or demographic, or what might have happened there?
I have Dr. Huey on Zoom, so I'm also going to ask her to come off and answer that question. Thank you.
Good evening, trustees, and thank you, Trustee Reckler, for the focus on A through G rates. This particular uptick did occur during one of our COVID impacted years. And during that COVID impacted year, one of the relief measures that you all as our gracious board adopted was a change in grading policy, right? So students were basically earning a pass or a no mark. So a passing grade is C or higher, which is CSU, UC eligible, right? So students basically had kind of a no harm clause during those years. So I do believe that that contributed both to general success for students and could possibly have contributed to this uptick.
Okay, good. The next question I have is, what are the strategies in this? I mean, this packet is just enormous. What are the strategies that you're using to help with any gaps in learning? So there was a year and 3 months that was online. Last year can only be called a reacclimation year. So there may be some things that were missed. And so a kid that left in maybe the 8th or 9th grade, is now in the 11th grade. Specifically, what are you trying to do, or what's the direction when, some foundations in there are not perfect or maybe were missed entirely?
I am going to ask Director Gabriel Chilcott to come off camera and answer some of that, and then I can chime in as well.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, board. I appreciate it. I think the question, I'm just going to repeat it to make sure that I'm in line with what you're asking, is what are we doing to address some of the gaps that we're seeing in the data, and specifically around learning loss, but I think it's a little bit more broader than that as well. There's a lot. First, I would say Ms. Huffman talking about how we're really focusing on improving our PD strategies and focusing them on the needs of every student, and specifically really pushing for tier one high rigor tier one instruction in all of our classrooms is one push. Another is really disaggregating the data and trying to drill down. So this is a very high level data set, but as we get to different levels across the organization, we're disaggregating out by strand or domain to look at specific skills to be able to know within the context of a school what we should be highlighting or should be pushing out more with our professional development. In addition, for instance, I'll just choose one. There's many instructional strategies or practices that we're bringing in, but we just were awarded a grant that we are using to purchase Zern as a platform for math, and that was specific for acceleration. So during the core content time, we want to ensure that they're using our rigorous adopted content, but Zern allows us to have an extra that we're able to get students on to accelerate their learning in that specific area. So again, it's that looking at data, disaggregating the data, making sure we understand what it is that students need, and then applying both the professional development and the tools to be able to accelerate that learning.
Okay, thank you. And then question number 3 is, it feels like there is a ton of professional development. And do you have what you need? Do you have people attending? And do you have the proper amount of time and dollars for everything that you need to deliver?
We have professional development being offered during the summer. We offered a series during the summer. We have professional development now. We use smoke days and are paying teachers. We're compensating teachers to attend and offering some PD for principals as well during that time. It's all voluntary per se, right? And then we are offering Wednesday PD, second Wednesday of every month, which is after their PD at school site. I did actually today start looking at all the attendance, and during the summer, during the smoke day, there were over 300 participants, but that was broken down by classified, and that was classified and certificated because we are offering it for both. But I thought for it being a smoke day and to have 300 people, that was actually fairly well attended. Mr. Orozco, Director Chilcott, and Dr. Hugh, I know Mr. Orozco and Mr. Chilcott also offer PD sessions, so they might have more specifics on the numbers, but I have been collecting all the feedback forms and the attendance, which I do and want to share with the board so you guys can see how many people have been attending. In the LCAP, I had each program director put time in the LCAP for paying teachers. And then we also allocated most of the funds from the educator effectiveness, which is a 5-year grant, $6 million that the board approved for extra time as well. So we do have the money. I think the time is still of a concern, I would say. I don't know if Mr. Chilcott or Mr. Orozco want to add anything.
No, thank you.
Okay, I am complete. I do have some comments too. Thank you.
Trustee Smith-Fall.
Thank you so much. President Christian, I'll ask your indulgence. I tried to narrow it down to 3. I do have 4 questions, but they're very short questions. Question number 1, how many people took the survey, the raw data, the Ms. Smith, the survey that you showed us, the California Healthy Survey?
I don't have those numbers right now. Are you speaking for 2018 or 2000?
So how many people took it in 2018, and then how many people took it? I think the last one was 2021, right?
Yes, I know that Morgan may have the answer to that question.
Okay.
Thank you. We had response rates by grade level hovering above and below about 30%. And I can follow up. I know you asked for the raw numbers. We can follow up with that.
Okay. And then Dr. Hurst, I would really like those raw numbers brought back to us so the public can hear the raw numbers of how many students took the survey in 2018 and how many students took the survey in 2021. My second question, the screener, Ms. Smith, you talked about the screener that we do for students. Is that screener, do we get parent permission to do that screener, or after that screener is done, is that information shared with parents? What does that look like?
Yeah, so because it's done school-wide, we do not get parent permission because it is done for every student in grades 3 through 12. So it is a universal screener. If your student is identified as high risk, then yes, your parent or guardian would be notified because we would be then providing a service to you and they would have to give permission to participate in intervention.
Thank you so much. My third question, Ms. Huffman, we're at the end of the first 3 months of school. So currently, how many third graders are not proficient? Because we just finished the first trimester. So how many third graders right now are not up to grade level?
I'm going to ask Ms. Matthews to give you that data point.
Thank you, Ms. Huffman. Give me one moment to get the right tab open on my computer. Thanks for your patience. The question was third graders?
Yes.
In English language arts?
So how many third graders right now are not reading at grade level?
Okay, we don't have the numbers at our fingertips broken out by grade level, but I can let you know from our district assessments on the overall proficiency levels. And so I'll give the proficiency as projected on our Smarter Balance assessments. We currently have 2 district assessments. Mr. Chilcott can speak more to that if there's a question regarding that. On our iReady math, we have 16% district-wide proficiency. And on our iReady English language arts for rather reading, we have 29% district-wide proficiency. Our other district-wide district assessment is the STAR that we've had longer, and the math district-wide proficiency on state benchmark is 22%, and the reading district-wide proficiency is 39%. Thank you.
Thank you. So Ms. Huffman, I think what I would love to see is like now, right? And in the third grade, because we just had a conversation about that's the marker, right? That's one of the markers. If they don't hit it in third grade, they're going to just continue that downward trajectory. So if we have it currently, because we just finished, so if we have it currently, what it is, and if we have to, because we're doing narrative report cards now, whatever we have to do to gather that information, to me, that's the key information where we are now. President Christian, again, thank you for your indulgence. My last question, under 10% of the Black kids are not proficient, under 10%. So we're at hovering around 9%. What are we doing inside the school day to address those student needs? Not after school, but what are we doing inside the school day to address those student needs?
So all schools within their SPSA had to identify additional resources either through their Title I funds or LCFF dollars to support, interventions in the classroom. You have some schools, it varies by schools. You have some schools that have coaches that are providing more targeted support. You have some schools that are implementing SIPs with Fidelity and kids are in small reading groups. You have some schools that are doing pull-out during the day. You have some schools that have additional coaches or tutors or academic supports during the day as well. We have some schools that are partnered with contractors as well for intervention, both pull in and pull out. At a district level, we have most of what we're doing is after school. So for example, and some is during school day. So we have mentoring for our students, which is a contract that just passed, I believe, last week or a couple weeks ago. We have mentoring for African-American students. We have a contract that went forward to really support with attendance efforts for our African-American students. One of our contractors will actually be doing home visits to ensure that students are actually coming to school, because as you also see our attendance data, and attendance is indicative also of, your academic success. So if you're not coming to school, you're typically not doing well academically. So we have an attendance effort and push for our African-American students, mentoring for African-American students. And then we have our Mafanikio, which is after school, but then we also have academic support providers, which are listed on EdJoin currently. We just pulled all the names from EdJoin. Our OASA department is interviewing because those academic support providers are going to be in school during the day, providing intervention to our students and schools, especially in our elementary schools that have the lowest achievement data for African-American students. So those are some of the things that are happening centrally and then also at our school sites.
Thank you so much. President Christian, I'm complete with the questions. I just have comments. Thank you, staff, for the presentation.
Okay. All right.
President-
Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you. I also have comments, but I'm looking at the time. I was wondering if I could make a motion to finish this item through comments and to extend the meeting until we're done with items F2 and F3, which staff says should take about 15 minutes for both. So we should be done by 10:30, but I want to make sure we don't.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just a motion.
Yeah.
The motion must include a specific time to adjourn.
Okay, so it can't just be extended until we're done.
No,
Okay.
unfortunately, your rules say it has to have a specific time and you only get one
Got
shot
it.
at it.
You think that I have it done by now? Okay, then I move that we extend until 11. Until 11. I don't think we'll go to that late, but until 11 so that we can finish these items.
Okay.
Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, would you take a friendly amendment?
One moment, let's clarify the motion that's being made. It is just till 11 o'clock. So if we finish F2 and 3, we would just continue on the agenda. You want to continue. You do not want to limit anything. You just want to go till 11 o'clock. Thank you for the clarification.
Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy, with that clarification, I would just second your motion.
Okay.
I'd like to put another motion on the floor.
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee.
You ready for me? I'd like to put a motion on the floor that the meeting is held until 10:30.
Is there a second? There's no second. The motion dies. Then we go back to the original motion. And we extend to 11 p.m. And we'll take the vote. Start off with the student trustees. Trustee Miles.
Miles, yay.
All right. Trustee Sapanya.
Pimpania, yes.
All right. Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, no.
All right. Trustee Smith Falls.
Smith Falls, yes.
All right. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Gonzalez, yes.
All right. And yes. We're standing to 11. All right.
Thank you. Can I move to comments for?
Yeah, we're going to comments.
Wonderful. 1 second, sorry, they're asking me for the timer. Thank you. Thank you. First, I just want to start with saying that I don't ultimately believe, thank you, that tests are a true reflection of what's happening. I go to the schools and I see a lot of learning and a lot of teaching happening. I actually always leave site visits very impressed with the work that's happening. So I just want to start by saying thank you to all the staff, everybody here, and everybody at our schools, because they're working incredibly hard day and night. And with that said, I also think that after presentations like tonight, I don't sleep because this data is atrocious, right? And I think that that's why we're all doing this work, because we are seeing students falling through the cracks in our data, right? Out of 7,800 English language learners, 4 are proficient in math, right? 6 in ELA, 1% are proficient in science. African-American students, 8% are proficient in math, right? And so on and so on. Graduation rates for foster youth is 38%. This is scary. And I hope that we're able to continue to have these conversations. And I thank staff for today's presentation because it was very informational for me. And it really helped me reflect. Okay, thank you so much.
Trustee Reckman?
Thank you. I have some comments too. So I want to thank you for the presentation and the thoroughness. And I'm so glad to have this. I mean, I'm thrilled to have this. We at least know where we are and we have a place to start, and we can decide what to work on. So I think it's great. I'm happy to have this meeting. This is the first one. This is really the first one, I think, since I've been on the board. So, I mean, I think it's great, and thank you very much. A couple of things that I'd like to pull out is that I would like us to not call any of this learning loss. I think it's learning interruption, because if you never learned it, then you didn't lose it, and it was a time of interruption. So I think if we can refer to it as, you know, some sort of like learning interruption, that would make me a lot more comfortable, because it was an interrupted time and it is what it is. I also wanted to touch on, do I have 1 minute or I'm done? Oh, I was done? That's it? Okay, then if you will, I will fill this out, not tonight, but I'll send it to you. Okay, thank you.
Trustee Smith-Fall?
Thank you so much. Parent-teacher conference are happening this week for elementary schools. This is the time that we should provide parents with the level of where their child is, if they're at proficient or not proficient, and then throw them the resources that they need to help get their children to that level. I am very disturbed that we're graduating students who are not proficient, because the two numbers don't add up. We have a graduation rate and we have a low proficiency rate. So we're graduating kids who are not proficient in these test scores. I would like to see this year's students' responses. The tapes were from the strategic planning, so I'd like to know what students' voices are around these issues this year. Transportation must be discussed in the district because it is directly responsible, or has to be involved in when we talk about absenteeism. How can teachers teach when they have extra kids 2 or 3 days a week? They have no prep teachers, no time, and there's no subs for the PD. We have to make sure that we have the resources available to help the teachers if we are going to have a real jump in proficiency at any level in our schools. I'll save the rest for board comments. President Christian, I'm complete.
Okay. F2.
Ms. Payne?
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to be guiding you through the 2 bond program annual audits. And we're going to be starting tonight with the bond financial audit. So just a little place setting for this. So we're back here at the board again tonight. So this is the bond annual financial audit for fiscal year 21. So this is July of 2020 through June of 2021. And really the objective of the bond financial audit is to evaluate the financial statements and accompanying disclosures. So this was looking specifically at the 2010 Measure D, and the 2012 Measure E, for which there were expenditures within this audit period. And with the drum roll, please, we did have an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that you can get. And to make good news even better, you can see through the report that there were no findings, concerns, or additional recommendations in this audit report itself. And with that, I'll turn it over if there are any questions.
Are there any questions? Trustee Record?
Were there any areas of improvement found at all?
Not in the financial audit.
Was it a comprehensive audit?
It is the statutory audit required by Prop 39, and the scope is what is set forth in the government accounting auditing standards.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Any other questions? No motion.
President Christian, I have a question.
Trustee Smith-Fall?
Thank you. Ms. Payne, what's the role in the CBOC, if any, in this report? Does this go to the CBOC? Do they have a conversation about it? What's the role?
Absolutely. So as part of the Ed Code requirement, there's basically three, and I was going to share those in the next presentation. But the CBOC has a role in receiving and reviewing the reports. We did present this at the CBOC meeting. The auditors were in attendance. They presented the reports. They also provided written responses to all of the questions that we received for the audits. And so they have a critical role, and as further defined in statute, the annual bond audits, there's a financial audit and a performance audit, and both of those are to be completed by March 31st and to be provided to the CBOC at the same time that they're provided to the board.
Thank you so much, President Christian. I'm complete.
All right, thank you. Are there comments? All right, we go to F3.
Ms. Payne as well.
Since I'm a little better organized this time, I'll try to make it easier to read. Good evening. So now I'm going to share a little bit more in detail for the second piece. So there's the bond financial audit, which we just took a look at. And now we're going to take a look at the bond performance audit. And so we did come back to the board with this item earlier in the calendar year in April, and there were some questions that we heard. So we wanted to put together a little presentation to help answer some of those questions. So when we came to the board in April, one of the questions was, has this been presented to the CBOC? And at the time we came to the board meeting, we had not been to the CBOC because the meeting that was scheduled was canceled. And so since we've left the board, we did go to the CBOC in May. The auditors were there, presented the audits, answered questions, and again, as I previously mentioned, provided written responses to questions. And what we did here was some of the other questions, I think very similar to what we just heard, are really, what are the statutory deadlines and requirements that are associated with these annual compliance audits? And so I've provided a quick summary of them for you here. So you can see in the Ed Code, it includes the requirement that the CBOC can engage in receiving and reviewing the copies of the reports, that the governing board provide responses to any findings, recommendations, or concerns that are addressed in the annual bond audits within 3 months of receiving the audit, and that it is provided March 31st of each year. And further in the presentation, we have the full statute for you just for your reference. One of the things we wanted to share, this is one of our glows, is one of the historical recommendations that we've seen in the performance audit is related to timekeeping. And that's really because the Attorney General's opinion has identified that there is some staff time that is allowed to be charged to the bond program, but it's a specific window. And so one of the things that we've been working on over a number of years is really developing and refining our timekeeping system to make sure that only allowable staff time is actually charged to the bond program. So I shared a little chronological timeline for you here to kind of share our journey. So it was back in June of 2019 that we really piloted a monthly time card, because previously we were doing it more intermittently. In March of 2020, we really improved that timekeeping because we learned a lot from our pilot, and we now have one time card for hourly staff versus another time card that is for salary. And then in the previous performance audit, which was for fiscal year 20, our auditor, ID Bailey, noted that this new protocol started in March of 2020. So they said, keep it up, but because you didn't perform this timekeeping for the entire audit period, we are going to note this recommendation that you continue implementing this in the performance audit. Well, it was just a month later that FCMAT was actually here in the district doing the fiscal health risk assessment. And they said, hey, we noticed in your performance audit, there was a recommendation about your timekeeping. And we shared with them exactly what I've shared with you. And so they actually sampled our time cards, which was our first really true test of hearing from someone outside of just our annual compliance auditor. What did they think? And so they asked for time cards. They did a review and assessment of our process, and it was kind of our first thumbs up. And that felt really great because it was good to know that an independent third-party auditor really looked at what we were doing and found it comprehensive and complete. So then here came, drum roll, our next big test, which was the bond performance audit for fiscal year 21. So this was the first time that we had this monthly improved system and implementation for the entire time period. And we got our second thumbs up, and that was from ID Bailey, who performed our performance audit for fiscal year 21. One of the things that we do want to share and provide full transparency, when we presented this item to the CBOC in May, they did pass a resolution. One of the things that they noted was they said, well, in your fiscal year 20 performance audit, it was noted that the timekeeping wasn't completely implemented. And so in the fiscal year 21 report, it says that there are no findings, and it doesn't explicitly state that the previous year's recommendation was resolved. So we had a great conversation at the CBOC meeting, and part of what our performance auditor shared with the CBOC is that the methodology of the performance audit, which is straight out of statute and GAGAS, the Government Accounting Auditing Standards, it requires this review. So the methodology of our performance report included this review, and there were no findings. And so one of the things that we found along the process as we were all learning together is there's an excellent resource that's available online. One of the things I've heard over the years at board meetings is, how do we understand what is in the scope of an audit? What is the auditor looking for? What are the procedures? And so we wanted to really uplift the resource of the California Education Audit Appeals Panel. They have a fantastic website where they identify the different types of audits, the statutes that align to those audits, and really what those reviews do. So this has kind of been a huge spoiler alert, but I would like to turn it over to our fiscal year 21 performance auditor representative, Mr. Edelman, so that he can share and you can hear directly from him about our performance audit for fiscal year 21 and the review of the timekeeping and everything else that comes along with our bond performance audit. So with that, I'll stop sharing.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just put this up 1 second. And as I put that on the screen, so my name is Nathan Edelman with ID Bailey, and I am the independent external auditor. So I used these same slides for the CBOC presentation, but I promise not to go into quite as much detail. I'll give you the executive summary of some of these things. And yes, Melissa gave you a very good preview of, I think, what I'm about to say. So I will try and keep it brief, but just to solidify a few things, scope of the audit, and what we are doing is the bond performance audit. But it really in any audit, auditor comes in and just causes a lot of trouble. We ask questions, we look at documents, we just create headaches. It is really the district. It's if the folks, in this case, inside of the bond program, they are responsible for answering questions, for supporting the audit. They have to give us the stuff that we need. They are also the ones responsible for, in this case, compliance, to ensure that funds are spent appropriately. At the end of the day, we ask our questions, we report back, and really that's it. The page that we issue that has our logo on it is the results of the audit. That's our work. So in this case, we're talking about the bond performance audit. So what does that actually mean? Audits can be just this wildly broad term, and it's really three specific things, which is one, ensure that the funds charged to those bond programs are compliant with Prop 39, compliant with the ballot or the project listing, which is part of the ballot. Verify that the funds are spent on its construction, school facilities, but it's really those capital projects that are identified in the ballot. And then it's there's an attorney general opinion. It's from 2004, and it says that if a school district charges salary to the bond program, that is okay, but those do need to be things that have a direct nexus to the bond program. So folks working on bond projects versus teacher salaries, some things are clearly okay, other things are clearly not. So the actual report goes into a lot of detail about the methodology, but it's really ask questions, look at documents about how policies work, look at actual supporting documents from the accounting records. So that's invoices for construction projects, payroll or human resources files for, payroll or human resources files for salary transactions that are charged to the bond program. Let's look at contracts, purchase orders, but look at source documents to validate the accounting records, and so that we can really answer the questions that we've set out to answer, which on a high level is this okay for the bond program? Is this an allowable expense? In total, of the total incurred expenditures, 21.8 million for Measure D and about 600,000 for Measure E. We looked at documents. We actually touched source documents that represent 17.9 million of Measure D, which is about 82%, and about 46%, 250,000 for Measure E. The audit, it works on a sample basis. There's high level analytics, but the actual stuff that we touch is on a sample basis. So these are very high percentages. And then Melissa did mention there was a finding that we had in the previous year, which would be the 2021 fiscal year performance report, which is about the accounting of salaries. And just to be clear, that is within the scope of 2021 and every other year. And the status of that is resolved, which is the reason why it is not repeated, which really is these four conclusions, the summation of all of the work that has gone into this, which is that expenditures align with the voter approved bond project listing. There are for things that are allowable per Proposition 39. The payroll expenditure, which was the item related to that previous year's audit finding, those are all aligned with that attorney general opinion that allows him to be charged to the bond program. There were evidence of compliance with public bidding and procurement. Change orders showed compliance with the things that we've set out to look at as well. Much more details. There's appendices in the report that we published that list out much more detail about the specific documents that we did look at. But that is my presentation. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and get out of the PowerPoint. And I'll turn it over to the board. If there's any questions that I can answer, anything I can clarify, I'm happy to do that now. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? Any comments from the board?
Okay.
Comments from the board?
Is there a limit?
Hmm?
Do you have a time limit for the comments from the board?
2
2 minutes? 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Comments from the board?
Comments from the board, and then we'll close out tonight. All right, we start with the student trustees. Trustee Miles, any comments? Trustee Sapanya, any comments? All right. Trustee Regular.
I just want to thank everybody who's working in our schools. I've been out seeing some great things. I want to really thank Team Nystrom for the visit, the walk to read visit, looking at SIP's implementation. It's really nice when you approve something and then you go out and you go to the professional development and then you go out and you see it in the classroom. So it's really awesome. So I really appreciated that. And then I wanted to come back and just touch on a couple of things from this data presentation. One is that I've been listening and reading to a lot of the commentary, and that pulling parents in is very important in parent learning support. So I really appreciate that and would like to understand that more. And I'll put that in my follow-up packet, but I think I think parents as partners, we really need to include them. I'm not sure it's done all that well. We definitely, I know we feel like we're a little on the sidelines. So I really think that is a great way. I'm also curious about attendance. The last time we had a presentation, the largest category was could not reach parent to verify why there were absences. So I'm just curious if that is still the case. And if we've made any inroads to getting parents to help us and to understand the ground that they're walking. And other than that, if you haven't voted, please vote and enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend. Thank you.
Trustee Smith-Fall.
Thank you so much, President Christian. I just want to say thank you to all the teachers and students and staff. You have done an amazing Herculean job over the last 3 months. It's almost impossible to even name all the hard work that you do every single day and what you sacrifice. Dr. Hurst, when we're looking at this data, we know the elephant in the room. It's been the same for generations now. We don't have to talk about the elephant in the room anymore. We know it, we've examined it, we watched it die. We are now looking at the bones. What we need to do is talk about what are we doing now to change? What are the do difference? What are the change agents? What are we doing to say we have done it this way for years and African-American students are still not achieving? What are we doing differently? And it needs to be a radical change. It needs to be something that is so out of the box that it is just mind-blowing, because whatever we have been doing is not working. So stop doing it. We need to stop doing those things that are not working. The traditional education system that we have in place is not achieving its success rate. It's not happening. So what are we going to do different for all students? And what are we going to do different for those most marginalized students? What the data tells us, which is our African-American students, our ELL students, our Brown students, what are we going to do different in this district? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the do different. And I'm looking for it not to be thrown at the teachers. We need to have the support and the resources in place from the parent education side and parent confidence side to the teacher support side. You've been in classrooms. I've been in classroom. One person can't do it. 2 people can't do it. We need 3 or 4 people in the classroom to have the small groups, to have the pull out reading, to have the literacy coaches. not just an English teacher, but a literacy coach. We're graduating kids who can't pass tests. We have to recognize that, and we have to stop wanting to be the best of the worst. I don't care what the state of California is doing. I care what WCCUSD is doing. How are we making sure we're graduating kids who are able to be successful in their post-education, secondary education life? I would like to see this continue to come back to the board, Dr. Hurst, over and over again with some action steps. Thank you all. Have a great night.
All right, thank you. And we go to Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you, President Christian. First, I just want to thank everybody here and everybody at home who has sent me letters and emails and calls and texts, all the support since we had our baby at home. It has been truly amazing to have all this love from all of you and all of our schools. It has truly been amazing. I just want to thank you all. My little girl is doing great, and so is my wife. So I'm thankful for that. I wanted to also finish a few comments from our data review. I wanted to just give a quick example. This is pre-pandemic, so of course the data has changed, and it actually talks about something I would like to see in presentation 2, which is site level data on all these issues or items. Baby Elementary School doesn't have any staff members left from when I worked there and I was a teacher. And the retention of staff is something that is critical, in my opinion, to retain culture and to make progress in academics. And in 6 years of the transition of having no staff there, who'd been there for longer than 3 years, that school went from being in the mid-range in math and ELA scores to, before the pandemic, it was our lowest performing school in the district. And that's just one example of the level of importance on retaining and recruiting quality staff that stays here long-term, because we can develop them. And if they stay here long-term and they create an amazing culture, then that's how you move schools, right? With a great leader that has an amazing vision, right? So I hear all of that we're doing, Dr. Hurst, in your strategic planning. That's why I feel so hopeful about that work. And I was just going to say thank you to all of you for that, and that we have to truly focus on that retention, recruitment, and what Trustee Smith-Folds talked about for the support of our schools and staff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And as we close out tonight, I just want to say, thanks. I want to thank the staff, for the presentation and the data, the information. But see, that lets us know that a lot of work has to be done and that we can't sit back and wait. We got to, develop in our math, reading and writing, and making sure that our kids have a good, strong foundation. And our elementary, everything starts from elementary. That's the foundation. So if we don't make sure the foundation is together, then everything else is not going to be together. So that means we got to go to work. We got to make it happen and make the changes and not just talk about it. Let's do it. Let's make the changes and help our students, all of our students, to go to the next level. So when they graduate, they can fly high. And that's all I have. I just want to tell everybody have a good week. And we see you at the next board meeting, November the 16th. Everybody take care. The meeting is adjourned. 10:24.